guys, it's Haley and welcome to another bookish video. Today we are doing a patron requested video. If you don't know, I have a Patreon. You probably know. I've been really excited about it lately, so I've been talking about it a lot. But my top tier, my queens, have a video suggestion box where they suggest videos that they want to see on the channel. And this concept is one of those videos. So y'all can all thank Kennedy for suggesting this video in the video suggestion box. And as soon as I read it, I was so excited to film this video because I read a lot of audiobooks, and I get them all pretty much from my library, so they're totally free. I use the Libby and Hoopla apps to do that. And then I also use Libro FM when I want to pay for an audiobook maybe that my library doesn't have, or that there's a long wait for. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks over the past couple of years, and I'm super excited to share my very favorite. I have a top 15 favorite audiobooks to share with you. So if you are just getting into audiobooks, hopefully you can get some good recommendations from this video of the ones with the best voice actors, the best pacing that fits well with an audiobook, etc., etc. However, before we get into the books, I just want to thank our sponsor for today's video, which is, of course, Dossier. And I've talked about Dossier a lot on my channel because I love them so much. I seriously use their products every single day. And what Dossier is a perfume brand, and they basically take your favorite luxury perfumes and create scents that smell exactly like them. They are ethical and sustainable, super affordable, and it comes with a lot of product in the bottle. I also love just the way that they make their bottles. They are so nice. These last me forever, not only in the bottle, but they also last on my skin for a long time as well, which is great. The one that I have here on the Dossier site is called Aromatic Pineapple, but it smells exactly like Y from YSL, which I know is super popular on TikTok. I've been seeing Saint Laurent perfumes everywhere lately. I don't know about y'all. This smells literally exactly like Y by YSL. It's crazy. It smells so good, and it is a fraction of the price. I know YSL perfumes can get up to like over $100, and all the perfumes on Dossier's site are between $29 and I think $49. That is literally less than half the price. It's crazy. And I have one more that I want to show you guys. So this one on the Dossier site is called Floral Pear. It smells so good, and this is actually a unisex scent. The ones that have this like tan writing on the bottle are unisex, and I love their unisex scents. I feel like I like a less sweet perfume, something more spicy, musky, and cologne-ish, and this one I love. And it smells exactly like English pear and freesia from Jo Malone. Again, Jo Malone is another brand that is so expensive, so it is super nice that I can smell like a popular luxury fragrance without having to shell out the luxury price tag, you know what I mean? So, as always, I will have Dossier linked down below. You guys definitely should go check them out, place an order. I've heard from some of you who have bought Dossier that you're really enjoying it, which I love. I love having sponsors on the channel that I love and that you guys love. So thank you again to Dossier for sponsoring today's video. Now let's go ahead and get into the audiobook recommendations. The first couple books I want to recommend are YA, which I usually don't read YA, but these I completely, absolutely loved. Both of these that I'm going to recommend were 5-star reads, and I think a portion of my 5-star rating definitely had to do with the quality of the audiobook. The first one is a given. It's pretty obvious. A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. This entire series lends itself so perfectly to the audiobook format. We are following Pip, who is a high school senior, and she is doing her senior capstone project on a mystery that has happened in town. Someone at her high school has been accused of murdering their girlfriend, and she sets out to prove his innocence and find the real killer. And she does this by interviewing people in a true crime podcast style of narrative, and it is so well done. On the audiobook, the just reader who voices Pip, I think, does a really good job like understanding the character that she's reading. It doesn't just sound like someone's reading words aloud. It sounds like Pip's inner monologue. And then of course with the podcasting elements, it is perfect for an audiobook format because they have like the crackling microphone of like the podcast interviews. It just makes it so atmospheric, and I absolutely loved it. And of course, this is a trilogy. It is a 3-book series, and I'm currently waiting in line at my library to borrow the 3rd book on audio. I cannot wait for it to come in so I can see if every single book in the series is in fact a 5-star read for me. The other YA book that I want to mention in this video is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. And along with this, I want to recommend all of Elizabeth Acevedo's books on audio because they're actually narrated by the author, and all of her books are written in verse. And the way that the author intends for them to be spoken, because it's verse, it's poetry, is the way that she reads them in the audiobook. So it just has so much more of an impact. It is so powerful. You can feel all of the emotion so much more when you're listening to it. Obviously, it's beautiful to read, but I feel like listening to it and her putting the emphasis on the words that she intended when she wrote it just makes it have such a bigger impact. So I absolutely love all of her books on audio, but especially The Poet X, because we are following another high school student, obviously, because it is a young adult novel, and our main character is struggling with her identity and how she sees herself, and she ends up finding herself and working through some of the trauma and things that she has gone through slam poetry. She gets into slam poetry at her school, and it really helps her work through a lot of the things that are coming up, coming of age issues, cultural issues, religious issues, and things that just come up being a young woman and growing into a woman. And I related to a lot of the stuff in this book, so I highly recommend it. Now let's get into historical fiction. I actually have 2 historical fiction recommendations, and I know that is not my genre necessarily, but I know that if I listen to a historical fiction on audio and I enjoy it, it is got to be because the audio is really well done, because I am not one to just sit down and crack open a 600-page historical fiction book. Not gonna happen. But I really did enjoy The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. This is another 5-star read for me, and I thought the audio was so well done. Obviously, this is a chunk of a book, but the audio made it go by so, I don't want to say fast, but in such a way that I felt like I was transported into the Alaskan wilderness where the story takes place. This book takes place in Alaska in 1974. This normal suburban family, mom, dad, and daughter, decide to pick up one day and move to Alaska. The patriarch of the family had recently got out of the army, come back from serving, I think in Vietnam, yes. And his army buddy who had passed away left him property in Alaska. So they all move there and decide to start over as a family. And it just chronicles their journey moving there, all of the trauma that they go through adjusting to living in the Alaskan bush, and especially our daughter character as she grows into a woman, completely transplanted in a totally different environment for her. I thought the voice actor that specifically voiced the daughter did a really great job adjusting her tone and cadence throughout the years as we saw her grow up, but still keeping the essence of the character, and the way that the scenery was described was just so atmospheric. This book on audio is just so well done. So if this seems intimidating for you, definitely give the audio a try. The other historical fiction that I loved on audio was Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Obviously, everybody knows about this book. It is super popular. It was another 5-star read for me. I believe this book takes place in the late 70s and early 80s, late 60s, early 70s, I don't know, 60s, 70s, 80s, but we are following Daisy Jones, who is a kind of pop culture icon and singer. She's trying to be a musician and kind of bust into the music industry, and we follow her as she teams up with the Six, who are a band who were kind of, you know, just chilling, making music. But when they collaborate together, apparently this album was just like the best thing on the whole entire planet at the time, and people are wanting more from them, but unfortunately there was a falling out within the band, and this book goes kind of like in a music biopic kind of interview style, as Daisy and the bandmates do a tell-all interview of exactly what happened throughout the years with them. There is a lot about sex, drugs, addiction, rock and roll. If any of that sounds good to you, you will love the audio. And the actual music, obviously when you're reading it you cannot hear the music, but when you have the audio, magically as you're reading you can hear, you know, the songs as they were intended to be heard. So I think that is an essential part of the reading experience of Daisy Jones. So if you haven't read the audio for this one yet, I highly recommend that as well. Now let's move on to contemporary stories. The first one I want to mention is Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. This follows a group of people who go to view an apartment that they possibly want to live in, and during the viewing they are all held hostage by a bank robber who tried to stick up a bank across the street and then ran across into the apartment building to hide, and in the process is taking them all hostage. And there's a lot of mental health rep in here. Some things could be triggering to some people, so just keep that in mind. But Frederick Bachman's writing style is very unique, and I think it's a lot easier to understand on audio. He has a very tangential, quirky writing style, and when you are reading it, it's easy to get a little bit lost in it, which I tend to enjoy. But I've heard a lot of people complain about it. I think if you are having that kind of struggle, then maybe the audio would be better for you. And I listened to the audio as I read this, and I really enjoyed my experience. It is a full cast, and I absolutely loved it. Another wonderful contemporary story on audio is Golden Boy by Abigail Tartine. This lady. And this story is a heartbreaking family drama about a family who one of the children is born intersex, where their genitals are ambiguous, they present really androgynous, and they just decide to raise their intersex child as a boy without letting him make that decision. And some pretty traumatic things have happened to him because of that and not because of that. And he's kind of coming of age and realizing that he gets control over his identity. So we follow him as he discovers what he wants and how he wants to identify. And we also follow other members of the family as he goes through this journey, and they try to support him or hold him back, or, you know, all the crazy things that happen within a family. And I usually don't cry when I read audiobooks. Usually I have to be reading physically for a book to deeply affect me emotionally, especially if I'm doing another activity while I'm listening to an audiobook. but this one made me sob. I did not have the physical book, and I was sitting there just laying in bed in the dark listening to this audio, and I started sobbing because of how effective the voice actors were, and of course how effective the story and the plot and the writing was in itself. I know this one is so underrated, and I love to scream about it, so I'm gonna take this opportunity to do it again. Please read this book. I know you're probably listening to me thinking,
yeah, Haley's probably good, but I don't know, that doesn't sound like something I'd be interested in.
You will be. Read it. This is a 5-star read, one of the best books that I read in 2021. You have to read this book. And the last contemporary recommendation I have for you on audio is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is a kind of romance, but mostly just a contemporary story of these two people as they come together and go apart in this on-again, off-again relationship throughout high school and into early adulthood. I think it is very relatable. If you fall in the age range of like 18 to 25, you will really find a way to connect to at least one of these characters. I connected to both of them as I was reading, and they're exactly what the title says. You know, they are normal people. They are just normal people living life, and it is so heartbreakingly genuine and viscerally real that you really feel for the characters. And I absolutely loved this one on audio. Again, I think it is a lot of credit to the voice actors. I don't know if there's a full cast for this one, but there's definitely more than one narrator, and I believe there's like ambient noise and music as well in this one that just transported me into the story a little bit better. So highly recommend it. I also have 2 horror recommendations for you. The first being Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I think Stephen King is really difficult to read physically, and I would tend to choose the audio over the physical pretty much 100% of the time, especially because his chapters are just like, you know, there's never like a page break with the chapters. It's just like text, and it's such small text. It is just not a great reading experience physically, for me at least. So I knew that I wanted to pick up the audio when I started reading Pet Sematary, and I'm so glad that I did. It is narrated by Michael C. Hall, who plays Dexter in the series Dexter, which I love that show. And the way that he narrates this story, you just see the picture of this dad becoming crazy and absolutely falling apart at the seams in his grief. If you don't know what Pet Sematary is about, it follows a dad and a son as they move to this place that borders on a haunted pet cemetery where you bury things and they might not just stay in the ground. That's the best way that I can put it. And of course it's Stephen King. The writing is wonderful. It is a very effective horror, but something about the audiobook just made it so much more immersive. And I've listened to other Stephen King audiobooks that were not as good as this one. Something about the Pet Sematary one, it's just so good. I mean, obviously, Michael C. Hall is a wonderful actor, and it really just shines through in this audiobook. I also want to recommend I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This is another 5-star book for me. I absolutely love this one. But now let's go ahead and dive into my audiobook recs for my favorite genre, obviously thrillers. The first one I would recommend is I Know Who You Are by Alice Feeney. This is about a woman who is an actress, not super famous, but like D-list celebrity, and she thinks she's being stalked by an obsessed fan. I'm gonna leave the synopsis pretty vague because what transpires from there is so crazy and shocking, you will never see it coming. The voice actors for this one are amazing, and it is just so chilling. I remember really being invested in the audio and not wanting to stop listening to it when I read this one. I also would recommend Believe Me by J.P. Delaney. Now, I did not like this book at all. I actually gave the book 1 star, but the audio, however, just the quality in itself, I would give 5 stars. I thought it was such amazing quality. This voice actress who voices our main female character, she does all of these accents because our main character is an actress, and she like does all of these accents that she does. She switches her voice when she's like acting versus when she's just interacting with people, you know, on the daily. It is crazy. And there's all of this like ambient noise, all of these like, you know, like forks clinking and little piano riffs when they walk into a cafe and there's a piano person playing. It is so well done. And I just wish the plot would have measured up to the quality of the audiobook because it is really so well done. However, I did not like the story. It is about a girl who's in art school in New York, and she's trying to be an actress, you know, she's trying to hone her craft or whatever, but she is struggling. She doesn't have any money. She moved here from England. She's penniless. So on the side, she works for a private investigator, a PI, if you will. And she basically poses as somebody and tries to get women who want to divorce their husbands. She tries to get the husbands to cheat with her on secret videotape as evidence for a PI in a divorce proceeding. So sounds kind of crazy. It goes off the rails into a place that I was not expecting and did not enjoy, but if that sounds good for you, I would definitely recommend the audio over the physical. I would also recommend The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley, or really any of Lucy Foley's books. If you're wanting to get into them, I would suggest trying the audio. They're all a full cast, and Lucy Foley's books are a very structured mystery, almost like an Agatha Christie style locked door mystery, where you have this cast of a certain number of characters, somebody dies, somebody killed them, and you have to figure out who is who. Specifically in The Hunting Party, it's about a group of 10 friends who all go on vacation into some snowy hunting cabin, and they end up getting snowed in there. There's a blizzard, and they start getting picked off one by one. It is a full cast, like I mentioned, and the audio is so well done. So highly recommend that, as well as, again, all of her books. And very similar to that one, I would recommend True Crime Story by Joseph Knox. This is also a full cast murder mystery where all of these friends are being interviewed for a podcast, almost in like a true crime podcast kind of style. And the narrator, the kind of interviewer of the podcast, is trying to interview all of these people to find out what happened to their friend who had gone missing years before. I just recently listened to this one and I really enjoyed the experience. I listened to it in the car and it was really the same feeling of when I listened to a true crime podcast on my way to work. So I really liked that aspect of it. The production value is really great, and I didn't rate this story too highly. I think I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, but it was still a really enjoyable mystery thriller, especially if you like ones with podcast elements. And my final thriller audiobook recommendation is Good Rich People by Eliza Jane Brazier. Obviously, y'all know this is one of my favorite books of 2022 so far. It is so well done. It is about this rich family who has a guest house that they let poorer people stay in for pretty cheap. But what the poor people don't know is that the rich family is playing a game with their lives, and the person who wins the game successfully
ruins the guest house dweller's life.
So fucked up, so ridiculous, so camp, so rich people drama. I love every part of it. And the voice actors who narrate this book just fully understand the characters. Fully, they lean into it. It is so funny. It is so well done. It just like, I don't know, it just brings the story to life. I switched off when I was reading this one between the audio and the physical, and something about the audio, just like the sassy voice of the girl who was reading it, oh, it was so good. So if you're thinking about picking this one up because of my recommendation, definitely check to see if your library has it on audio. And the last recommendation I have for you is a nonfiction book. It is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner, and she is obviously Japanese Breakfast, the lead singer of Japanese Breakfast, and this is just her memoir. It is about her life story told through the lens of her grieving her mother who passed away a few years ago. And I love when memoirs are narrated by the people who wrote them. I think it just makes them so much more impactful, and I just love the way that Michelle's lyrical style of writing shone through in the audio, the way that she spoke it. It was just, it brought it to a whole new level, and I would recommend any memoir that you want to check out, listen to it on audio. I just feel like it's a more connected, respectful way to consume a memoir. So you're not just like reading through this person's life. It's like you're actually listening to them tell the story. I literally have been on a waiting list for I think 6 months now for the audiobook for Becoming by Michelle Obama. I swear everybody at my library snapped it up and got on the list as soon as our library got this audio. I when I signed up, it was like a 50-week wait. I literally think it was like a 45-week wait. So I don't know how many weeks I have left, but hopefully I will be able to get to Becoming soon because I loved Crying in H Mart so much. And I think a lot of memoirs are narrated by their authors. I think like Yes Please by Amy Poehler, Bossy Pants by Tina Fey, all of those kind of, you know, popular pop culture-y memoirs are narrated by their authors. So definitely check those out. And that is going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you got a couple good audiobook recommendations. And I just want to thank again Dossier for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to check them out down below. And like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And don't forget to go to therapy and read a book this week. I love you guys so much. I will see you in my next one. Bye.